start with saying that naming is hard. So I was discussing with my two colleagues right before we started, is asynchronicity, is that with an H or not? And is it the correct word for it? But you can just say async, like you're used to that in Swift. So I am Hākon Bogen. I'm an iOS developer for 6 years. Now CTO at Hākon Bogen. I also do some lecturing at Westerdals. And we are doing IoT apps. So we've been working with IoT apps for the last 1.5 years. We've done several. We have some learnings that I want to talk about today and share. There's some interesting problems when you are doing apps that require to talk with real hardware and not just the server. So one of the apps we did was an alarm control app where you can control your alarm system with your phone. Pretty convenient because you can see that you can see if your windows are closed. So if you leave home, you can just go to the bus and you can, did I forget to close my window? And if you did, you can just check your app and confirm that you did or did not. So you don't have to leave leave the bus and run home and close the window. You also can, of course, control the alarm, and you're obviously not allowed to set the alarm for your house if you haven't closed the windows. Second app we did was an app for a Yale doorman, where you can control your lock, a smart lock, with your phone. Yes, that's a use case. Like, it's much easier just to opening the door with a code or something. You don't need to use your app for that. But we have some interesting features in it. One is that we have cooperated with postal delivery services that can actually deliver packages while you're not at home. So you get a push message in the app, like asking, can postal delivery come at 13 o'clock at Friday? They always come when you're not home, right? Like they are always outside the door and like, where are you? And I'm at work, of course. So you can just let them in with generated code. And that code is just valid for like 3 minutes. So it's really secure. And you have control over every person that opens or locks the door. So it's not a security issue. So what do I mean with the title of the talk? Double asynchronicity. Like, what is that? So when we are doing ordinary apps, we're connecting to a server, right? Yeah, that's really easy. That's just asynchronous calls. You do a request to a server and you get a response. But it's not that easy when you're dealing with real hardware, because we do a request to the cloud, and that cloud has to then connect to a device in your home that is the hub of all the IoT devices in your home, which our company in Lillestrøm named Datek is making. It's really cool, and that we call it a gateway, and that connects to the devices in your home with a Zigbee protocol. That's like a wireless connectivity. So that gateway has to then tell a module that's attached to the lock to open or close, and the module then does a binary signal to the lock, which then opens. So you see, our use case is much harder than just regular HTTP to cloud. We have to go like 3 steps more, and that's like another level of asynchronicity than we're used to. So what if I want to open the door? Yeah, if I'm before we did the first IoT app, we were like, okay, opening the door, that's easy. Like, just post unlock door, maybe with a JSON package, which is the code. But yeah, that's only to the cloud. If we get HTTP 200 OK, the request was succeeded. That's just 1/3 of the way, right? So nothing happens if I just post to unlock door. I'm not guaranteed, because one of these steps might have failed. So that's harder than ordinary. So one thing that you can do is just to poll the door status every second, for example, every 2 seconds. I post unlock door. I want to unlock the door. I'm standing outside. The app is just has to refresh until it has actually done the request and confirmed, because I want to see that the door is open in my iPhone as well, even though I'm standing there and like I can actually see the door opening or not. Yeah, we do this with like just get the status every 2 seconds. I'm getting it at 13:00:01. Maybe it's slow because of the Zigbee module isn't finding the device on the door. So I'm polling it every 2 seconds. Okay, it's not that much JSON. You can do it that way. But what if I have a big house? So I have like I'm in the future. I have a big IoT house. I have lots of different stuff going on. I'm throwing a party. I want to, if it makes sense to do an IoT app, I want to keep like stay updated in my app. So every time there's an event, I want information about that event in the UI of the app, right? So if someone downstairs turns a lamp on, I want to see it. And if the disco lights were turned on in the living room and I'm upstairs, I want to know it in the app and run downstairs and join the party, right? Or if the dishwasher went offline, I want to know it immediately, because that's the reason you have connected devices, is to actually see the statuses right away. Of course, the same for door unlocked, and if the jacuzzi reached optimal temperature, I want to feel it right away. So I'm leaving for the jacuzzi. So how can we do this with IoT devices? One way is to get the home every second, for example, just to stay updated. Like do a get request, get the latest changes, show that in the UI. That's a lot of JSON. If we have to get everything in the app all the time, because how else would you stay on like synced? We need to know every device because every device might have changed. So here's some example JSON from real IoT backend, and it's a lot of JSON. So something we could of course remove some of those attributes, but a lot of them is really important, because what if one of the devices change something here? It's updated software version. I want to see that. If it is not always on anymore, it's changed, because you can change hardware devices on like in the physical box as well. So I need to stay updated. But it seems like really slow to just get the whole data structure every second. If we want to stay updated, we can get it for every 5 seconds maybe. We try that. It was okay for a lock app, but when we are doing like a big IoT house app with a lot of devices, it tends to use a lot of resources. And the users don't really understand that your app uses a lot of resources because it's not doing anything. It's just showing the devices. Why does that take so much battery? It's just saying updated. So we were thinking maybe we could do it another way. We don't want to just get the status all the time. We want to get it on demand when it's changing. We want to, okay, if I turn on the light, I want to get information about only that light, not information about my bathtub or my jacuzzi, because that's not relevant. I need only jacuzzi data when the jacuzzi changes, or else I just have the data in the app and can just show that information. So we were looking into how we could do that. Have anyone heard about server-sent events here? Yeah, some of you. So that's a technology for streaming, basically. You can call it one-way WebSockets. You can just keep a connection open in your app. You do a GET request, for example, and it just stays open indefinitely. And it can send small chunks of data when it's needed. So I don't need to really just get a major resource. I can just subscribe to one service and I get what I need. And it's really easy to implement. So we could do WebSockets as well, but I think that's harder harder to implement. Because look how easy it's to implement this in Swift server-sent events. So this is all the code. Have anyone used Vapor? So that's like a framework for doing Swift server apps. Swift server is really cool. When the guys at Datex said we have chosen server-sent events, I hadn't heard about it, so I just wanted to, okay, what's that? How does it look? How does it feel in the app or in Postman? So we built a small demo server that runs on Swift. And it's really easy when we are doing Swift server, because we can share actual models with the app. So we had all the structures. So here it's sending just a door locked event, then it waits 3 seconds, then it sends a lamp turned on event, waits 2 seconds, and then sends a jacuzzi temperature reach 70 event. 70 might be a little high, I hope that's Fahrenheit or something. And then it closes the connection. So here we can just add whatever we need. So we can add hundreds of events to get the feel on how it functions to actually stream hundreds of events to the app, because that's a likely scenario in the future. Now we have like 1 lock or 2 locks or 1 jacuzzi, but maybe in the future, like one person said on a talk here yesterday, you can have like 50 devices at home. And then it's like, how will that feel? Our app needs to work with 50 devices as it needs to work with 1 device. So Swift Store is really cool. So what are the requirements for our app? We have, like, of course, we need to get updates as they come in. As soon as possible, we want to update my UI to actually show that lights are going on, temperatures are changing, jacuzzis are turning off and on. So we need to stay up to date, regardless of where we are in the app. Because if I'm editing a light, I want to know that if it has changed name by the time I pressed edit, or if it has actually turned off while I'm editing it. Because then it doesn't make sense to edit it, because you can't talk to it anymore, for example. Or if I'm editing, like, what's my favorite temperature, and that has changed, I want to know that as well. So in our entire app, we need to stay updated all the time, every page. How would we do that with vanilla iOS? Like, we're just doing a regular app. There's several ways to do it. We tried with like just having global notifications at first. You can send a global notification that says your home is updated every time there's a request, or just okay, this device is updated. But then you need to have subscribers in your entire app that subscribe to these notifications in all view controllers, edit, view, ordinary views. That's kind of tedious. So we were thinking, is there a better way? And it is. I'm a really big fan of, has anyone seen the Kickstarter open source app? 1, 2, maybe 3. So I think that's a really cool code base, and they do a lot of stuff really neatly. So we were like, that was maybe half a year ago. I just saw that, and okay, they are doing reactive cocoa. It's a buzzword that is thrown around on different conferences. But if we actually see the definition of reactive cocoa, like the definition description in GitHub, it says it streams values over time. So that's really perfect when we are streaming values over time for our IoT app. So that's like the fit made in heaven, because it's just exactly what says in the description we want to do. So we went for that technology, or that way of doing the app. So here's just to set the stage for explaining some examples of how we use reactive cocoa. We have a home, like that's my home, right? A home has, of course, rooms. My kitchen, my living room, my hallway, for example. It has a name. And rooms have devices. They have names. It's my lamp, it's my door, it's my fire extinguisher, my jacuzzi, piano, etc. And the devices have some kind of attributes. We were thinking at the start like one device can do one thing, but it's actually not true, because you can have wall sockets that actually control temperature, that can report temperature. You have light bulbs that can control temperature, and you have all sorts of combinations. So we said it's as an array of device attributes. It can be on, it can have dim level. So dim level is for dimmable lights. You can dim them down or up, or you can turn them off. So those are both these device attributes. And in reactive Cocoa, or reactive Swift actually, there is one method that we got a tip from. I mentioned I was a big fan of Kickstarter, so we actually asked the lead programmer on Kickstarter to help us. We had like one coaching session with him. He's a really nice guy, Brandon Williams. So if you're having struggles with reactive or functional programming, you can send him a mail. He does consulting for like part-time. So he tipped us about this method that's named Scan. And that's basically the data provider for our entire app. So that's like one big function. We can, of course, refactor it to several smaller, but it takes one initial result. So when we launch the app, you give it a home. For example, if you're starting the app for the first time, you just give it nil because you don't have a home yet. If you're loading from database, like the second time you open the app, you just give it what you had before. And then it takes a next partial result, which is a home, the existing home, and a message. So a message is one of these server-sent requests. That can be, for example, light dimmed, or jacuzzi turned on, or fire extinguisher broken, for example. And it returns a home. So it returns the updated home structure. And it delivers a signal producer, which can give errors, or it can give a home. And it basically gives out a new home object for the app to update every time it has received a message. Okay, so I was just talking with my designer and tried to explain that to him, like Scan and Functional Reactive Programming. And he told me that maybe we can just give an illustration for those that didn't read the code. So we have an initial home that can be nil or not, and we just give that to Scan. And it takes home objects, like the current home, and when it gets a message, it adds that to the home structure. Adds can be, of course, changing values or adding new devices or rooms, and it delivers a updated home structure for my app to update. So here's actual code from our app. I hope you can read it. We have the home from database. That's optional value, of course. It can be nil or it can be a home. And then we set this stream from our service. Like it just takes the messages from the server-sent API and serializes them to actual message objects, which we get here. And the message object is an enum, which switches on the different kind of values it can have. So when you start the app the first time, you get a refresh. So that's called initial home. If we get the initial home, that's just the entire home structure of our app. And then we just return that because that's the current home. We don't need to add anything. We just replace everything in the app with that current home. If we get the room created, it has a room. That's from the JSON in the server-sent events structure. And you just return the existing home you have plus that room. So it's really simple. Here I obviously operator overloaded it, but it just goes through the structure, sees if it has that room already in the structure, and if not, it adds it. So it's just adding a room to an array. Here's a case for device attribute changed. So that means you turned on or off a device, and then it just returns your home structure plus that change. So that change is if you turned on a device, it just replaces the on value with a bool, for example, or it can just replace a dim value with the current dim value it has received. So this is the entire like how we actually create updates for our app. And we set up the scan here. It's the first page of the app. It shows a list of your rooms with devices and stuff like that. You can go down into a room and see the devices there. You can edit or add the stuff to the room. You can add the devices. You can do all sorts of stuff. And every screen here just subscribes to the main signal that this returns. And if you're familiar with reactive programming, you could just say, okay, when I tap one room, I just want to filter out that room from the home structure. So I just send the room and the signal, I can subscribe to the changes for it. So here's the code for actually going to the next view with a room you tapped. So this is kind of hard to read for those who aren't too familiar with Reactive Cocoa, but we're basically setting up that once a room is tapped, we make rules for that. Once a room is tapped, you can send that room and a signal to the next view controller. So here we make a property with actual room that is tapped, the room object, and the signal for updating that room. So when we're populating a new view controller with this, we populate it with a zero object, like it's the room you tapped, and you subscribe to changes with the room signal. So yeah, sorry if that's hard to read. I won't go into the details of explaining all this. There's some other talks you can check out about like explaining MVVM and reactive stuff. I think it's hard to read, so I'm not like forcing you to understand it right away. Okay, so we set up a lot of different rules in our app, streaming, we're doing everything. We as technical people think it's really cool to do all kinds of streaming, signals going everywhere, but how does the app actually feel if we're getting tons of events? And want to test like how does it work to have an app which just gets tons of events and UI is changing all the time? Does it feel right? Does it feel like, do we need some kind of indication before we just take sliders and move them without the user actually doing it? Because that can happen. If I go over there and turn off the light, I will get an update in the app and that will drag a slider to the bottom, for example. So we want to test this kind of how does the app work? And when you're doing IoT apps, you don't want to really run up to the second floor to turn off a light and see how that works, and then you want to run down to the first floor and turn off a light. That's really time consuming. So we made a way of testing the app with mock data. And that's a little special when we want to stream, since we're only dealing with streaming events. So we set up this kind of mock service with a given array of messages we want to receive, and then the time interval we want to receive them at. So here we are, if you have this in the app delegate, for example, you can say after 3 seconds, I want the app to receive an initial home. That means when you launch the app, it loads for 3 seconds, and then it shows actual data and populates the entire app. 2 seconds after that, we get a room created. So then a room will just show up in the app. Like just a new row will be inserted because we have a room list, and then the new room will add to that list. And that's how does that look without seeing it before? Because that's not usual behavior in an app, that things are just inserted, deleted, and stuff. So now with this system, I can just give deploy to test flight and say that the designer should do the animation work for this? Does it feel right? Should we have a warning that says received update for the app or something? Without the time consume of actually doing this stuff. And you can see after 9 seconds we get a device attribute change, a dim level, and here you can just add tons of events. So if we want to try it with hundreds of different events at 5 seconds interval, you can do that. It's just adding more events with the mock service. Okay, how about controlling devices? We are doing really asynchronous stuff, but we don't want to actually wait for things to be confirmed before we adjust the UI. So say I'm dragging a slider to dim that light. I want to actually drag the slider all the way there, and it shouldn't lag or something and wait to getting confirmation from the actual module on the light to be updated. So you have to make a best guess and say that, okay, we just drag it in real time, it goes over there, maybe we show us kind of spinner or something, or maybe we don't. But there's some problems with doing this, just guessing that it will work, because what if the bulb went offline after you sent the request? Or what if the gateway, like the main hub in your home, just is offline? Then the bulb won't change, but the UI has changed. So that's a really big problem. If the request never actually goes to the server, or if I dim it manually to the given value, say I want to have a dim value of 70 on that light. It's 50 now, I want it to 70. It takes so long time, I actually go to the wall and turn the dimmer to 70. Did my request in the app fail? Because that wanted 70, I wanted 70 there. Who succeeded? But what if I dimmed it manually to 69? Is that a failure? So I dim it to 69 on the wall socket and 70 in the app. That's a problem. Like, who is right? And what if there's really slow Wi-Fi? What if I say that it should be 70 and then it takes so long time that it never happens? How long should the UI stay updated? How long should the slider, if we drag it to 70, immediately update? And we're just standing in the app and it never happens. We have to have a system for actually just taking it back and saying this didn't work. So we did something called a resettable action, because we have to, without the server confirming this, we have to have say that, okay, we went from 40 to 70, and if it didn't work, we have to just ourselves, without getting anything from the server, we have to reset it to 40 if it doesn't work, because the server won't know that that request ever came if the server is down and I want to control the app or the light. So here when you do an action in the app, we have to say, okay, what was the original dim level at the given time you did the change? What was the wanted dim level at the time of the change? And we have to set a timeout that says, okay, if you didn't confirm this with the server after 10 seconds, you have to reset it yourself without getting anything from the server, because the server might not ever know that this was a request. So that's and that's this system also brings like another problem. For example, if I was talking about the server being slow. So what if it took 12 seconds to send the request, and it's like in the Zigbee system and retrying or something? I reset it after 10 seconds, and then the server actually, or the light bulb actually got the request after 12 seconds. Then we will just go back, I reset it, and then get a confirm on the value. So yeah, it's some really hard problems to solve. And I need help of you guys to solve one of them, because we have we have a lot of discussions with users of these systems. They're kind of complicated, and there's so much things that like don't show a clear answer. So, for example, this here I have a wall socket icon and a lamp icon. That's pretty okay. Okay, I have a wall socket over there. That's the wall socket icon in the app. In the list of devices, you see a wall socket icon. That's good. Yeah, you have a wall socket icon for a wall socket. Makes sense. And you have a light bulb icon for a light bulb, of course. But what if? And here's, like, we have had several discussions on this. What if you have a light bulb that is connected to the wall socket? What kind of icon do you have for that? Because you're actually controlling the wall socket and not the light bulb. So you can have a mix of light bulb and wall socket, maybe. Or you can just have the light icon, because a normal user will feel that you're controlling the light bulb, right? It's that turns on and off when you tap the icon. But a more technical user would say that you're actually controlling the wall socket and you need a wall socket icon for that. So if you understood the proposition, who would vote for actually showing a wall socket icon for the wall socket with a light bulb connected? Anyone? Okay. Yeah, maybe a 1/3. And who would show a light bulb icon for it? Yeah, okay, that one. So, yeah, Andreas, you have to, both? Okay, yeah, maybe that's a good idea, both. It's, of course, wall sockets can do anything, like they can control coffee machines and you name it. So, yeah, maybe both is also a good idea. Okay, so another problem. How do you turn off a dimmable light bulb? You guys have probably have dimmers at home. You can it's a round control. You can dim the light up and off. So how to show it in an app? So at the top here, we have just a slider without anything else. So when you slide it to the upmost left, it actually turns off. And if you turn it here to here, it turns on and dims. And the second one is actually when you turn it to the utmost left here, it's only on the lowest dim level. And we have an action for actually turning it on and off here. Because the lowest dim level is often really far from being turned off. So there's a problem with having this. And also this is kind of looks really weird. So you can also have like a combined control that indicates that there's some kind of event or something happens when you drag it all the way here. But it's like you can just drag it from here to here and dim the light. So there's like, we have asked some users, haven't gotten a clear answer on how they want to control their devices, because I think this is maybe how dimmers work on some kind of wall systems today. You can press it to turn it on and off, and you can dim it by turning the thing around. So I was just thinking if we could have a vote for what do you think makes sense to have for a dimmable light bulb that you can turn on and off and dim. So if I can get hands for the top thing. Yeah, okay, that's pretty few. And the second one with the action and yeah, okay, that looks like it won. And the third one, okay, yeah, it's a lot of different. Maybe we should customize it. Like at least on Android, you can say that you can show, you have to say how you want it to look. But in iOS, we of course take the choice from you. So I hope you're writing down this, Andreas. Some tips and tricks for IoT apps. You have to take user feedback with a grain of salt, since you guys can't agree on anything. And some users are really technical and want wall socket icons for light bulbs and wants really a lot of technical data in the app, which is really hard to explain for regular users. Like most people don't know voltage and watts and stuff like that. Other people like want to tune their temperature themselves and set these kinds of stuff. And it's really useful to do testing with both mocked and real devices. Mocked is like you set up an app that will receive a lot of events when you use it. And of course, testing it with real devices at your home. Installing this at your office or home to get a feel on how it works. And you have to be gentle with errors shown to the user. So I was mentioning I wanted to dim that light bulb to 70, and then some other person in the room dimmed it to 69. Don't show an error. Like error cannot dim to 70, new value is 69. There's a lot of stuff going wrong in IoT apps. So that, for example, that light bulb might just go offline and online and offline and online. And you don't want to really bother with error messages for that if that just happens on the middle of the night and no one cares. And if you lose connection to anything, just do the best you can with it. Maybe save the request for later or explain it to the user, but don't show them like a pop-up and you have to okay it. And there's a lot of technical limitations on IoT items and devices. My advice is to not let them decide the UX of the app, because if you start with that, you might go down a bad place, because you can do a lot with UX and explaining stuff, and don't start with a no and says that it can't be done or something, or that in the real life you dim a value with pressing it and turning it. That means we have to have the same control in the app. That's not the case. We can do anything we want in the app. And I really recommend having an office with bad Wi-Fi, because then you're always testing the worst case scenarios. And a lot of Wi-Fi is bad for some reason, for example here. So a lot of users probably have bad Wi-Fi at home. So you need to test that a lot and design your app around that. And I added one slide after going to Florian's talk yesterday. Of course, we are thinking about security, but my talk wasn't about that, so I didn't include anything we have done for security in my talk. But you can check out his talk, probably be recorded and put out. And this resource is really great to get some tips and tricks for what you can do to improve your IoT apps. So thanks.
Yes, so feel free to ask questions. I think the topic was very exciting, so probably there is something you need to want to learn more about that. Yes, please.
So you were saying that when stuff doesn't go like intended, you have to update the UI back, or when stuff appear and disappear, it's like just happening in the UI. How do you handle it to the users? Because as a user, I would feel like it's a little spammy, or
yeah.
Again, you don't want to show the errors all the time as well. So
yeah, it's really hard. So so the question was how do we handle that kind of if you do an update and it fails, like you want to dim and it doesn't actually happen, how do you handle that? So we were thinking maybe we have like a global kind of notification system that is just really small and not or it is easily dismissed, which you can just, it said that a device is your last action failed or something, a small thing maybe, or you can just say that in the log, they're just indicated in a log, and the user can go to that. We haven't really decided, because we are still working on this, and testing it, so there's so much unknown here. So I don't have a really great question answer. Maybe Mobile Era next year I can give the facet for that.
Yes,
But
please do.
yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that can happen.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Since you are doing the application to let people into the entrance door, I can't get away from the security question. So yes, just briefly tell us how.
Yeah, I'm
how
really glad you asked that, because I think it's much more secure to have a smart door than to have a regular door. And I'll give you the reasons. So one is if you give access to someone else, like you lend the key to your like cleaning person or something. If you have a smart home or smart lock, you have total control on when that access is used. You can revoke it at any time for any reason. If you lose your phone, you can revoke that access. If you lose your keys, like some people might change their lock if you lose your keys, but many people won't bother because it costs like 3,000 kroners. So if you lose your like key for the digital lock, you can just revoke the access and it won't work anymore. And it doesn't even have a keyhole. So you're probably also wondering, what about if it's offline or like if it's
under
out of
attack
battery?
or yes.
So they Yale made a really clever solution that you can just hold up a battery under it, and it can just function for like a minute. So then it solves the issue with offline. So yeah, with revoking accesses, I think it's much more secure. And of course, it can be hacked, but an ordinary door can also be lockpicked or just broken open. So yes, there are some issues, but I think it's overall more secure than a regular lock. Because also, if you lend away the key for Airbnb, you don't have control over if the key is copied. But if you give away one access, you can set it to only be for a week, for example. This week you have that access, and after that it's not functioning anymore. And they can't copy it without you knowing, because that's not possible. Okay. Yeah, so there's a lot of things I think are more secure with it.
Any more questions? 1, 2, 3. Okay, I guess then that's thanks a lot for your talk. That was really a pleasure to have you here.